Quentin's Enginwerks, more than meets the eye.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Quentin's Enginewerks, brought to you by Indie Comics Dispatch. I'm Quentin. I'll be your host. Tonight, we have a special guest named Shannon Potratz. He's an artist for a book called Dragonring that was written by Cullen Bunn, and he's been part of the 501st Havoc Squad. We're going to have all sorts of fun tonight. And Shannon, welcome to the show, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. It's a cool thing with my boss. If I ask him for something, pretty much I get just about anything I want within reason.
Very cool.
If you can't tell from the intro, I love the 80s. In fact, my Mount Rushmore of geek stuff from the 80s, it was pretty much all from the 80s. It's G.I. Joe, Star Wars, He-Man, Transformers, and definitely the formative years.
Yeah. Well, I would argue Star Wars was more a product of the 70s, but the 80s works too. So.
Well, Kenner went to war with my dad's wallet during the 80s. So.
Oh man, yeah, all of us.
So, who's on your Mount Rushmore?
On my Mount Rushmore of the 80s, or just in general?
No, just in your, and all of your pop culture fandom. Doesn't have to be the 80s. Just, who are your big four?
My big four.
For franchises.
Well, obviously Star Wars. Blade Runner is a huge one for me. Blade Runner is probably my, in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. And then as far as comics go, Walt Simonson's run on The Mighty Thor was probably, among my best memories of reading comics as a kid. So it was sort of my entry point into superhero comics. So, but Star Wars being my entry into comics.
I think Star Wars was our entry into a lot of stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And we'll definitely be coming full circle and coming back to Star Wars in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
I think my all-time. I think the top of my Mount Rushmore, though, in terms of comics, is Hellboy. So, Mike Mignola since before his Hellboy days, and then when, of course, launched their Legends line there in the early '90s to kind of was sort of their answer to Image Comics. Mignola started working on Hellboy, and I was on board from the very beginning of that. So
nice. Yeah, I remember Mignola when we got the ventriloquist on Detective Comics, and I was going this. For me, aside from Harley, Joker, the ventriloquist is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
So that was where I started to get to know Mignola a bit,
Right.
And then I was very late to the party and realizing it was the same guy that did Hellboy.
Yeah. Mignola, a lot of people kind of trash it, but Mignola's work on Cosmic Odyssey was some of my favorite, superhero comics. A lot of people didn't ever think that Mignola was a good fit for superheroes, but I really liked his work and, kind of gravitated towards it really early on. So, his work in both Cosmic Odyssey and in the Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom graphic novel was one of my absolute all-time favorite graphic novels. So,
okay, yeah. So, for you personally, how did you end up getting into comics?
In terms of working, or just in general?
Yeah. We've got whichever you want to go with.
Well, like I said, Star Wars was kind of my gateway into comics. I started reading. My very first comic book I ever bought was Marvel Star Wars number 6. I've actually got it hanging on my wall, and it's trashed and absolutely trashed. I couldn't tell you how many times I've flipped through it. Um, but shortly after I got into the Star Wars comics, I started to notice certain artists, and Walt Simonson was one of the very first artists I noticed working on Star Wars, drawing Star Wars comics, and I kind of made it my mission to find out more about what this guy did, and that kind of led me into Thor. So that sort of my launched my interest into superhero comics, and then from then on, it just sort of snowballed into a lot of other artists, John Byrne to Arthur Adams, and I could rattle off names all night for those guys. But
I was gonna say, last week when I was talking with Garrett Gunn and Christina Blanche about Good Boy and all the different variant cover artists they've had, and and going who else would you like to have, and and everybody was seeming to chime in, and there were all sorts of different names, and for the most part, no bad answers.
Sure. Well, from then on, I kind of, I had other friends, artist friends, I kind of hooked up with in the, early 90s there. I graduated from high school in 91. And I don't think I ever set out. I don't really think I ever set out to be a comic book artist. I just wanted to be an illustrator. And my first job out of college, I went to Spokane Falls Community College in their graphic design and illustration program, and then started working for a company called Buffalo Shirts before I'd even finished there. And I never stopped working, in one, area or another. I never stopped working in illustration. And then eventually I went on to, some other places. And then my freelance work kind of led me to Outland Entertainment, and Jeremy Moeller over there.
Okay.
He and I have built a relationship over the last 15 years, and it's eventually led me into working on things like Dragonring. So,
yeah, and don't be knocking coming out of Spokane Falls Community College. A guy named Todd McFarlane came out of the digital design, digital work.
For sure. Oh, I wasn't knocking on it. A lot of people trash community college, but it was a valuable tool for me, and it obviously worked out for me. So
yeah. You mentioned Dragonring. With Dragonring, I know it was a Kickstarter campaign. For me personally, I was going, okay, Cullen's a great writer, and you're from my hometown, so I'm kind of an ass if I don't support the home team. So between the two, I was going, I'm backing this from day one. I still have I still haven't had a chance to read it, so I was wondering, what's your elevator pitch on Dragonring for anybody that's not familiar with it?
Well, I can give you the pitch that was given to me, and when Jeremy came to me with it, he said, "I think you'd be a really good fit." He says, "Think Indiana Jones meets H.P. Lovecraft," and that was it for me. I was on board from the get-go for that. So,
holy crap, this is going to be fun.
Pardon.
And I've got a buddy that loves Indiana Jones, and I'm going to have to get a hold of and go, hey, you missed out.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about my top 5 favorite movies. Raiders of the Lost Ark's in that top 5 probably. So.
Well, 1 and 3 definitely. It's kind of like to me, it's kind of like with for them it's the reverse Star Trek. For the indie movies, the odd numbered movies are good, whereas the Star Trek, it's the evens.
Right. Yeah. Generally, none of them ever, as far as Indiana Jones is concerned, none of them ever held a candle to Raiders for me. Raiders was personally for me is the one that connected with me the most, and it's easily the one I've watched the most. So
I'm right there with you.
Wrath of Khan, to me, there's not another Star Trek movie that holds a candle to Wrath of Khan. So
Yeah, I'm not as big. I'm not as big on the Trekker universe. I'm,
Yeah,
you know, but with all the different fandoms and universes out there, oh my goodness, there's the number of franchises that to get caught, truly caught up and be a subject matter expert in,
right.
that'd be easily a year to 2 years just on Star Trek,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's just original series.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of more of the old school Trek. By the time I got to Voyager, the Voyager kind of lost me, and I never quite got back into Star Trek as much after that. So, um,
And I get that from a lot of people. Voyager just overall just not quite what you would hope
you know,
for.
it was fine. It just wasn't one that particularly connected with me. I really enjoyed Deep Space Nine a lot more than I ever expected it to. But by the
Mhm.
time I got to Voyager, it just I think I was just losing interest in general, maybe, and so I moved on to other things.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. So with Dragonring, do you have any anecdotes or anything like that from the time that you spent working on that one?
Um, well, I don't know. Though I guess the last page on issue one, um, it was one where we kind of, Cullen had it scripted out, and I drew it the way he described it. Particularly with regards to the kind of the last page is sort of the big reveal. The hook to grab you and to launch into issue two. Um,
All right.
and then it kind of it introduces the main bad guy, I guess, and then I drew it just as he described it in his initial script, and as I got to wrapping up that final page, I looked at it and says, and I posted it on for Jeremy and Colin to take a look at. I said he comes off a little too crypt keeperish to me. And then Colin said, "Well, once you said that, now I can't unsee it." So I took another stab at redesigning it, and then drew the final page again. And then we all looked at it, and we all says, "It's still not quite there." And then so Colin completely rewrote the final page, um, and
Okay.
had a new description for the character. And I think the third time was definitely the charm in that one. It's one of those times where usually when I have to make major revisions like that, it's kind of a hassle. It's kind of a pain. On that one, we were all kind of feeling the same way about it, so I actually didn't mind because by the time we got to that third version of the page, I was a lot more happy with it, and felt
Mhm.
pretty good about turning it in, once we had that final redraw on it. So yeah, I didn't mind. I didn't mind redrawing that one at all. So
I understand. Yeah. You know, there have been times where you've done work where you've had to do, where it seems like no matter what you do, the person you're working for, we're going to keep names out of it because I want you to be able to keep working, but but have there been times where you've been, where you did a project and no matter what, you couldn't make the person happy, and to
oh,
a point where you're
sure.
just going,
Yeah, every artist and graphic designer has had that client, and it's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes they come to you with an idea, and frequently they have something in their head, and they have trouble communicating that. And no matter what I do, I just can't quite hit the nail on what they've got in their mind, and I can't read their mind. And then they
yeah,
have a hard time communicating what it is what that picture actually is. I mean, they hire me because they can't visualize it. But on the other hand, sometimes I can't visualize it for them either. And yeah, I've had a number of those over the years. I'm pushing close to 30 years now working as a professional illustrator. So, yeah, that's happened more than once.
Yeah, I know there was a while ago where I tried to have an artist commission a Transformers piece. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the Skyline variants where you have a character, and then you've got, and then along the side you've got a skyline with with a bunch of buildings, and the different names of all the different people that have been involved in whatever title over the years, or their names are in the building. And we were trying to figure out. I was trying to make that one happen, but the artist pointed out, no matter how many names you get in there for a title this big, somebody's going to be left out. Somebody's going to be pissed off about her.
You can't please everybody, and it's impossible to please everybody. As much as we all want to, it just doesn't happen. And everybody has their own spin on it, and it's just art in general is a subjective medium. It's a subjective medium. So,
very true.
What appeals to one person doesn't appeal to somebody else, and I've done plenty of work that didn't appeal to certain people, and that's fine. That's not my audience, and that's okay. So,
yeah. Out of all the comic artists that are out there, do you have a favorite story from one that time when you met one?
Yeah, I got to meet Al Williamson. Oh, it's probably been, I'm almost embarrassed to say, it's been 25 years. I met Al Williamson in Portland. It was before it was called the Rose City Con, but at the time it was the big Dark Horse convention down in Portland, and I went down there. And at the time, I was kind of trying to break into comics. I had drawn, submission pages for some Star Wars submission pages, and and I took some of those pages with me to that convention, and Al Williamson was a guest at that show, and I was pretty excited to meet Al Williamson. He was one of my idols too, his work on the old Star Wars newspaper strips, of course, and then some of the Marvel comics was just fantastic. He was one of those guys that captured a sense of realism that a lot of other artists, a lot of other artists were much more stylized, and his stuff always felt much more real, it's particularly when he drew characters like, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, that he captured who the characters were, based on the actors. And so he was one of my favorite guys, and I was pretty excited to meet him. So I walked up to his table with my pages, and I laid him down, and he started flipping through them, and he nodded his head, and he says, "Yeah, this isn't too bad." Of course, gave me a critique on the pages, and then he came to like one of the last pages in my stack, and he says, "Oh, I recognize that," and he recognized a pose that I directly lifted out of one of his comics. He zeroed in on it just immediately, and I was so flustered. I'm sure I turned beet red. And I swore after that I was never ever going to lift from another artist ever again. So, but he was cool about it, and it was a great experience. I'm glad I got to meet him. It was one of those people I was really, oftentimes you're disappointed in your heroes when you meet them in person, and it wasn't the case with Al Williamson. He was just awesome to talk to.
Yeah, in my experience, I agree with you. It's very much on both ends of the spectrum. For me, both with this job and as and as just being a regular fan at cons. There have been artists and writers that, oh my gosh, they were so awesome.
Yeah,
and where I'm going, you need to come back to somewhere closer so I can actually be able to see you again and hang out. Jamie Sullivan the guy is hilarious, and he'll sit and talk with you for hours on end. Randy Emberton is very, very, very good with fans. In fact, before COVID, I was at a con, and I had a buddy that was in line for Emberton to get, or Emberlin rather, to get a book signed and witness for grading. And he was on a really tight schedule because it was a 1 day. For us, it was a 1 day show. Get everything done while we were in Portland and get back home. And Amberlyn spent probably 45 minutes talking with this one person at the front of the line, and all the while you could just see my buddy getting more and more frustrated.
Right. Yeah, but it happens, and
But the other side of that is,
no, go ahead.
To me, that is exactly why fans are buying those tickets to the con, though. To be
sure,
they could for some of the celebrities that may or may not be there, they could care less about that. I'm coming in. I want to be able to talk to this creator. I've got this creator, and by all means, as long as it's a willing to and fro, and not just some not just some fan that's cutting in.
Right. More often than not, I think my experience with meeting some of these, celebrities, whether they're creators or actors or what, I've more often had pleasant experiences with them than pleasant, and one of my favorite ones was actually at Celebration 5, Star Wars Celebration 5 down in Orlando. I got to meet a gentleman named Paul Bateman. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's done a lot of concept art for the film industry.
Oh, okay.
And he's been an extra in a lot of movies too. I know he's an extra in things like I think he was actually an extra in Star Wars Episode 3. He was like a Mon Calamari or somebody like that. He played an extra in one of the Harry Potter films, and but he's also a concept artist, and he was the curator of the Ralph Mcquarrie Museum over in the UK. And my one goal when I went down to that was to get the art of Ralph Mcquarrie. It was in a book, and that was my one big purchase that I wanted to make when I was there. And I got to talking to him there in that booth, the Mcquarrie Museum booth. Of course, it was an amazing experience because there's all these original Mcquarrie sketches and stuff up there too. So getting to see those up close was just, one of those moments where I'm pretty sure I was crying as I was looking at some of these sketches. But I went over to purchase the book, and I happened to have my sketchbook with me, and he and I got to talking, and he started flipping through my sketchbook, and I was flipping through his. And we just immediately connected, and it was a fantastic conversation. Unfortunately, it was my last day at the con, and we were actually playing out that night. And he says, "Are you going to be around? Maybe we can catch some beers at the pub, or something." I said, "Unfortunately, I got to head out." So I was really disappointed I didn't get to hang out with the bar after the show. But
God, that would have been awesome.
It was really cool, but after he got done flipping through my book, and he commented on how great my sketches were, and and then he said, "Well, let me see what I can find for you." So he went through and digging through his stack of Ralph Mcquarrie limited. They were limited, signed and numbered by Ralph Mcquarrie. Some of the very last things he ever signed, and he went and dug out the lowest number for me and pulled it out, and
nice.
He gave it to me. And months later, I was flipping through it because I didn't really pay attention to what number it was at the time. I was just happy to get one,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really pay attention to the number until almost a year later. I was flipping through it, and I noticed that the number on it was 66, and so I was like, "Oh, that was fairly ironic number for that." So, but that's my Ralph Mcquarrie story, I guess.
Execute Order 60. Awesome. That's a cool story, though. Now with me, but I have two. I've got my 9 to 5. I've got this job. I've got my family. I've got it seems like all sorts of things. So everything. There's always a ball in the air trying to juggle and make sure that to do the best I can for time management. How do you make sure you meet your deadlines?
Frequently, I have to stay up all night. Um, my time management is not always that great, especially now working freelance full time. It's actually better since I've I'm freelance full time. Back when I was working full time, graphic design, and then coming home and doing freelance, it was a lot more difficult because I was working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week or more, and then coming home and working another, 5 or 6 hours a night, trying to get, you know, the freelance stuff done. So I think my time management has gotten better since I've been able to go full time because now everything I do is on the list. It's not, oh, I can't work on this because I'm at work, So
Mm-hmm.
but then the trick now is juggling when, especially when they have multiple deadlines at the same time, is juggling what to work on, you know, uh, X amount of hours on this day, and then X amount of hours on this other thing over here. So um, yeah, it's tricky, especially when you get into that mode, and sometimes when I get into a zone where I'm drawn, I completely lose track of time. So um, yeah,
I can
it's
easily see
a
that.
challenge. I haven't figured out the easy answer to managing that yet. So if somebody out
Yeah.
there knows, let me know.
Yeah, I get it. For me on my work days, it's get up, take the kids to the bus stop, come back, make breakfast for myself and my wife, and read a book, and digest it while I'm doing dishes. And if things go well, I might actually be able to start writing a little bit of my review of it before work, and then
Yeah,
all of my breaks throughout the day are finishing the review so I can get it out that night.
right.
And then repeat.
Sure, sure.
Mm, But but there's that's also having to juggle around a 9 to 5. So that
Well,
makes it a little bit
yeah,
easier.
absolutely. And of course you have to have time for, your family and friends
Hmm.
and stuff too. And so you've got to make that.
Well,
We all just kind of figure out how to do it, and I think everybody has their own way of, finding that
um,
balance.
in that regard, I'm really lucky because I work with a few of my best friends.
Mhm.
Actually at both jobs. Um, so between in that regard, the friendship part is easy. The family thing, that's part of why I work god awful hours, so I make sure I make it a point to get up in the morning so I can actually see kids before school.
Right. Yeah.
Because otherwise I won't. Otherwise I wouldn't see them from Sunday morning when I leave for work until later on that night. And Dale says
Yep.
evening, Shannon.
Hey, Dale.
And so going back to some of the different titles, I know you mentioned Hellboy earlier. For as an artist and creator, do you have a list that you have a pull list of that so you read to get ideas, or just as a fan?
I don't have a regular monthly poll list anymore. I don't collect as much of the monthly floppies as I used to, mostly because I found it was difficult for me to keep up. And I always had my poll list, my poll box at the comic book shop here in Spokane, and I've been buying books from Craig since I was, you know, since his first store up on over on Boone Street, and he's where I buy my comics. And so, but I don't have a regular pull list anymore. I found it hard to keep up with them, and I always felt bad when I started getting backed up in my box and
Hmm.
couldn't get my box emptied out. So mostly I collect trades now. My big thing is I love you know the Hellboy library editions and the BPRD omnibus editions. So I kind of make sure I keep up with those. Um, but a lot of my other comics that I like reading, that are, that I wait for them to come out and trade now. Black Science is one I like a lot.
Okay.
There's Seven to Eternity. Jerome Opeña's artwork on that book just absolutely blows my mind. That guy's inhuman. How good he draws. So
I'm familiar with the title. I've never actually had the opportunity to read that one though.
Check it out. It's kind of a sci-fi fantasy. It's more almost high fantasy, which I like. There's not enough of those kind of books out there,
So kind of something like Piers Anthony from back in the day.
Yeah, it kind of along the lines of something that uh, um, Dennis McKiernan or uh, R.A. Salvatore, that kind of stuff. It's kind of along those lines,
Okay.
but with almost kind of a bit of a science fiction spin on it too. So.
Salvatore with science. That I got to see. I'm definitely going to be hunting that down. You just cost me money.
I think Rick Remender is the one who writes that one, and then Jerome Opeña draws it. And there's a few writers that I really make note of because I'm an artist, so I tend to follow artists more often. But Rick Remender is one of those guys that I definitely take note of. He writes some really interesting stuff. I loved his run on Uncanny X-Force, I believe it was called Uncanny X-Force, and he wrote a run on that was just great. I wasn't a huge X-Force fan, but I was when he was writing it. I thought it was great. So actually, that's
I really liked.
We started working together. So.
I really liked Remender's work on when he was doing Venom. When it was Agent Venom.
Oh, okay.
That was.
I never read it. I never read any of those, so I might have to check those out.
That one was well done, or at least because you've got Flash Thompson as Venom.
Mm-hmm.
Only he's a good guy, but the way they've got it. Excuse me. The way it works is they send him on missions.
Okay.
And the missions have to be completed within 36 hours because otherwise that's enough time for the symbiote to bond with Flash.
Oh, I see.
So it's for all these missions, get in, get out.
I see.
And
trying to prevent the bonding of the Venom symbiote.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
so that's kind of.
And it kind of reminds me of Suicide Squad, only dudes an army of one doing this.
Sure. Yeah. I can honestly say I've read a lot of DC stuff. I was always more of a Marvel guy. I mean, there's plenty of DC stuff I have read, but I always tended to gravitate towards Marvel for not any particular reason. I think that's just who the artists were that I tended to follow. Drew a lot of Marvel stuff, but.
And there's nothing wrong with that. For me, I'm pretty much the same way. With Superman, it's really hard to get behind an invincible hero.
Right.
Whether he's doing the right thing or not. That to me doesn't matter. Okay, we bring you this being who gets extra power from your sun, and his only weakness is an element that's supposed to be really rare on your planet.
Right. Well,
okay.
I think a lot of writers struggle with a character like that. There's some Superman stuff out there that I really enjoyed. But
me too. Dan Jurgens' Death of Superman. I absolutely love that book.
Yeah, he's a tough character to write for. I liked Mark Waid's and Alex Ross's work on Kingdom Come. That's probably my all-time favorite interpretation of Superman. I liked the older, kind of world-weary Superman in that book. So that's when I tend to go back and reread every few years. I have a stack of books like that I tend to go back and reread every few years.
I think we all do. For for me, that stack is I Kill Giants, Watchmen, V for Vendetta. and it's not that it's not that old compared to the others. Sarah by Garth Ennis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my stack's Batman Year One, Kingdom Come, Dark Knight Returns, Earth X, um, and there's another one in there. Oh, Weapon X. Those are kind of my. I think those are my reread stack. And of course, I don't think I need to mention Hellboy because I'm always rereading Hellboy.
Yeah.
I'm
kind of surprised not to hear Batman Hush though. That one, as far as that the series for with Batman, that's probably one of the best ones to me.
By the time it got to Hush, I was almost reading No. I think that was Jim Lee, right? Hush? I think Jim Lee was on that one. I've read it. It's not one that ever quite. I guess it's not one that ever quite connected with me the same way. There's 3 books that I've always kind of read. There's 3 Batman books that I've always kind of read. In my head canon, they're a trilogy, and I read Year One and The Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns, and to me, there's that acts as sort of a trilogy of Batman books that I enjoy reading. For whatever reason, they're not a continuity for anybody else, but they probably are for me. So.
Well, to me, The Killing Joke is must read for. Realistically, it's if it weren't for the fact that you've got Batman and Joker in it, it's more of a simple explanation of life. Right. We don't, to me, people take for granted one bad day. That's right. To me, that's the emphasis of The Killing Joke. Yeah. It's not, these bad guys aren't created over a long, huge long time. All it takes is one really bad day.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what I enjoyed about that book is that it sort of humanized the Joker a little bit in a way that we hadn't really ever seen before.
Since
we've never had a definitive origin for who the Joker is, which is kind of the fun of the character, because his point of view is unreliable, which is the point of that character. So I enjoy it for that, and the ending of that book. I've always kind of enjoyed the ambiguous ending to that book. I don't know if Alan Moore's ever given a definitive answer on what actually happens at the very end of that book, but
from what I can tell at this point, Alan Moore is looking at comic book enthusiasts and giving the majority of them the middle finger, which I don't understand.
Yeah. I think he sort of became disillusioned with kind of the whole industry, particularly with regards to how his books were adapted into film. I think he's owned every single movie adaptation of one of his stories that's ever been made. Including The Watchmen, which I thought was one of the better interpretations of his to a movie.
Watchmen was fairly accurate, and V for Vendetta took a couple liberties. Killing Joke. Oh my god! When I watched I got that for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I was so disappointed in the movie of The Killing Joke.
I was not impressed with the animated Killing Joke adaptation either. I thought they took a lot of unnecessary liberties with that one that didn't really add anything to the story at all. I'm not sure why they decided to go in the direction they went in that one. So I was a little disappointed in that one too. But
that didn't even begin to, especially that the clip beforehand where that had nothing to do with the original Killing Joke story.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want to have spoilers in it, even though it's been a few years. But this way, in case there's somebody out there that hasn't seen it that wants to, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Batman, what the hell are you thinking?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That was one of the unnecessary diversions it went, and I didn't understand why they felt that was necessary. So I wasn't a fan of that one.
Yeah, because at that point, we weren't even into the actual story, and they'd already lost me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually not even honestly sure I made it through the entire film. I think I tapped out before it even ended. So
I think I had it on, but at that point, it went from I'm watching this to this is background noise while I'm doing some dishes and all
well,
that.
winning because I enjoyed both the adaptations of Year One and The Dark Knight Returns, the animated versions. I thought they were fairly decent. I thought Peter
And
Weller was a great choice for an older Batman.
indeed, I'm hearing scuttle that they're talking, they're talking about having Michael Keaton come back to reprise his role.
Well,
And
it,
or at least playing as an old man Batman.
yeah, he's supposed to have an appearance in the Flashpoint movie, isn't he?
I'm not sure. For having a job that focuses on comic books, I don't pay that much attention to the movie aspect of it.
I'm pretty sure there was a trailer. They released a teaser trailer during DC's fandom,
Oh, okay.
and they released a trailer there, and I'm pretty sure that's Michael Keaton's cowl that they show in that trailer.
Oh, okay.
His cowl's got a pretty distinctive silhouette, so I'm pretty sure it was Michael Keaton's version. So.
Okay. Yeah. For the most part, with the big couple of titles that I've kept, but almost everything on my pull list is indie now. So
yeah,
part of that's kind of a job when you work for a company called Indie Comics Dispatch, but a lot of it.
Sure. Yeah. I think I tend to read more indie books now than anything Marvel or DC. Mostly because it got to be exhausting trying to keep up with all the event books and Marvel and DC's annually, and sometimes they would have 2 a year, and it's like at that point the continuity becomes a nightmare to try and keep track of. So
well, the continuity and the big thing is, at least to me, okay, you're like you said, you have these events, they span 35 books,
right,
which, okay, that's fine, except for if it's gonna be that big and expand that many books, have more than a page in each book that's relevant to that overall story, so you can actually figure out what the hell's going on.
Right. Yeah, and then the other thing that I enjoy stories with an end. The Marvel DC continuity, it's perpetual and it goes on forever. So there's really never a beginning, a middle, and an end to those stories because they have to keep going for years and years and years and years. I enjoy characters that have a lifespan or stories that have a beginning and which is what I've always, not to harp on Hellboy again, but I enjoy that because, the character has a lifespan in those books, and it's not something that has to go on forever and ever and ever. So
I get it. For you it's Hellboy, for me it's Transformers.
Yeah.
I just wrapped up reading Transformers Shattered Glass, alternate universe, where in that one the Decepticons are actually the good guys that are fighting for equality for everybody, but they had lost the war on Earth and there's only a handful of them left.
Right.
And Starscream is the hero of it all, which took that took a little bit of adjusting.
Yeah, I have to make a confession. Hi, Morgan. I have to make a confession. I've never read a single Transformers comic, much to the disappointment of many of my friends, I'm sure.
You're forgiven.
I never quite connected with me. I thought, as a kid, I thought Transformers were cool. I had a Soundwave. That was my first Transformer, and I think I had a handful of them. But Soundwave was he was cool because he turned into the tape recorder and he had the little cassette tapes that turned into a robot.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that I had.
Yep.
I've never gotten into any of the Transformers media outside the couple of toys I had. So
yeah,
not that I
just got
haven't.
one.
It just wasn't. It just wasn't, so.
Well, everybody has their own fandoms. And to me, there is no right or wrong answer. For you, it's Hellboy.
I'm gonna get flack for that for sure. I have no doubt.
For Dale has a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I know Dale's. At least when I was working with him, Dale had Batman. Batman seemed to be his big.
Doing my best to try and keep everything going. Hey, there we go.
Oh, did I lose you?
Nope, I'm back. It's like I said, my internet's trying to be nasty tonight.
Well, here I was worried about mine, tripping out. So.
I had just rebooted, 10 minutes before the show started, but there's some days where it just wants to play, be that way.
Right.
So once upon a time, you were doing a little bit of work, doing some work for the 501st Havoc Squad. Are you still doing that, or is it?
I haven't been active in the 501st for probably. I think the last troop I did was in 2015, I think, and I did Mariners Night over in Seattle.
Okay.
I think that was the last event that I was active in the 501st. It just became a thing where we started, me and a 2 or 3 other friends of mine kind of were the ones that started Havoc Squad in Spokane, and then as it grew, it was one of those things where when we were small and there was just a few of us in it, we felt like every one of us needed to do every event that came along, and that included conventions and charity events. And the charity events were my favorite, especially things like Wishing Star. We did a couple of Wishing Star events, which those were the best, and those were the times I was thankful I was behind a mask, because I'm sitting there bawling my eyes out, and and then at the same time I'm doing a Tusken Raider roar, because I got to keep kids entertained. But over the years it just got so it became more and more difficult, especially when I started to focus on my career. It became more and more difficult to devote the time to the 501st, and thankfully it started to grow to the point where those core few of us there in the beginning didn't feel like we had to be at every other event, because there were other people that could kind of take it over, and keep helping it grow. So it was certainly fun. I don't regret any of it. I had a great time doing it. For me, it was making the costume and building the props. That was the funnest part. Wearing the costume after a while, I got to be kind of a pain, because you can't see in that thing, and I'm sitting there baking and pulling the helmet off, and I'm just got sweat just pouring off of me. So I'll miss that part of it. But some of the events that we did, and just seeing the way people light up when a group of those characters walk in the room.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty cool thing. So,
I was going through my pictures, a while ago, and being that we're both, both have ties to Spokane. I was wondering if that, when we were, that if that was you from Once Upon a Time.
Yep, that's me. That was when Spokane Comic Con was still at the community college, and of course at that time it was called Spokane Comic Con. It wasn't called Lilac City Con yet. So, but I that was definitely me.
I thought so when when one of my friends was telling me that they knew a guy that that was in the 501st
Yeah.
and dressed like a Tusken Raider, because you don't, everybody goes for, seems to go for the stormtroopers because they're cut and dry.
Yeah.
Or either that or Boba Fett's the other one.
Right, for sure. The Tusken Raider was kind of fun because, especially at the time when I was doing it, it didn't seem like there was many guys doing the Tusken Raiders, at least in this area. Havoc Squad is part of a larger 501st umbrella here in Washington called Garrison Titan, and and the first time I went over and I trooped Emerald City Con in my Tusken Raider. I don't think there was anybody at the time in Garrison Titan doing a Tusken Raider. And I went to Emerald City Con and I got mobbed. I couldn't believe it. I thought everybody would just kind of ignore me, in favor of, like you say, Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers and Boba Fett. Those are the cool characters everybody remember. But I got absolutely mobbed when I trooped Emerald City. In fact, I ended up in the Seattle Times, on the front page of the Seattle Times, when I trooped that one.
There are definitely worse things to be on the front page of a newspaper for.
Right.
And there's nothing at all. I personally like the Tusken Raiders. I've got, as far as characters go, in my display case from Star Wars, I've got an original R2D2 cookie jar. I've got a Tusken Raider statue, a statue of Bosk. Then when they re-released the Wampa about a year and a half ago, I got that one.
Yeah.
And the Black Series Biker Scout. So but other than that, and I've still and Jawa Bank and the re-released AT-AT and the original Rancor.
Cool. Yeah.
I've got just a few things Star Wars in there.
I've got my Tusken Raider sitting in the mannequin right there in the corner. So.
Awesome. I'd heard about that. I was wondering if I'd get to see that.
Yeah, there he is.
Excellent.
I found that mannequin for $20 at a yard sale.
Money well spent.
It's had the Tusken Raider on it ever since. So.
Excellent. And we'll be coming back to Star Wars in a little bit. For going to shift gears a little bit. I'm a bit of a foodie myself, and so in the inland Northwest, in my experience, any of the decent Mexican and Chinese food restaurants seem to be shut down. Do you know about any that I'm not aware of?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know which ones you're aware of. My brother and I go to Casa de Oro over on Division. That one's kind of our regular.
Okay.
I have to go. I haven't hit. I wouldn't call myself a foodie at all, so I couldn't say as I've hit a lot of the Mexican places in Spokane. There's one out in the valley I was at recently, but I honestly couldn't tell you. It was awful. I mean, the food was good, but it's awful that I can't remember exactly what the name of the place was.
Fair enough. Yeah, because like I say, it seems like especially since COVID happened, every time we find a place we like, it closes.
Yeah. When I was a kid, we loved Mexican food, our whole family. And when I was a kid, we went to a place over on Division, there's the Showgirls there on Division out in the valley. And Pedro's was just.
I have no idea where that is.
Just down the street. Spots from the Showgirls, but it was just run by this little Mexican family who were really cool, and they knew us when we walked in. And I was taking, I think it was in junior high, and I was taking Spanish at the time, so they would always make me speak Spanish when I would come in there and order and stuff. And it was cool, but I don't think Pedro's has been there for years. I don't know where they're, so.
And with the way that everything in the Spokane area just seems to be booming.
Yeah. Things are, Spokane's changed a lot, especially I grew up out in the valley, and the Spokane Valley is not the same place I grew up in at all. So,
for me, I grew up on the north side, and it's the same thing there, where we're looking at a whole bunch of all these family run businesses that went by way of the dodo along the way, and
yeah.
But the other side of that is some of the cool history that's still around. Or at least for the time being. I lived in one of the houses that Johnny Depp was working in when when he was doing Benny and June.
Right.
And
go ahead.
And the cinematography, when you've actually been at the house and realize what's all in the area, and they did a phenomenal job of hiding the fact that this was practically an industrial park.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you watch that movie, you're almost disoriented because the locations that they shoot and the way they establish them with other locations doesn't jive with
for any of the locals
geography of Spokane at all. But that's kind of that's kind of the magic of movie making. It makes you feel like you're somewhere else. But I used to work at Bassett and Brush, a craft design firm that I worked at for 20 years, and they were over in the Garland district, and so we were right down the street from Ferguson's, which is where they shot the scene where Johnny Depp dancing with the fork and the spoon. So yeah, and Ferguson's, of course, you walk into Ferguson's and they got all these Benny and June posters and in production stuff hanging in the restaurant. So
hey, they earned the right.
Yeah. It's a cool place. It's got kind of a retro vibe to it. It's a really neat little place.
I've gone there a few times for breakfast, and it was phenomenal food, reasonable prices, and if you with the amount of food they give you, if you walk out of there hungry, that's on you.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you walk out hungry, you can just go down the next door and go to the milk bottle.
Never done them back. I've never done the food crawling going back to back, but I've, or at least not simultaneously. I have eaten at both places in the same day, but that was okay. Garland Street Fair. Have breakfast, go do all the fair stuff, and then hit the milk bottle on the way back.
Yeah,
because once a week I try to hit something in in the Garland district, just because everything in there is mom and pop, and I want to keep them going.
Oh, for sure. And they've really tried to cultivate a kind of a unique, kind of isolated downtown atmosphere there in the Garland district, which is kind of fun. I used to exhibit at the Garland Street Fair every year for a few years until COVID kind of came along and shut it down. So I don't know if it's coming back this year or not. So.
A little bit late there, but
somebody's Googling showgirls right now, so now I'm in trouble.
One of us is in trouble. My take on those establishments is, ladies, you deserve better. And fellas, you're wasting all your money thinking that you have a chance when it's not going to happen. But anyway, let's go. Moving back to Star Wars, because goodness knows, between the two of us, there's a lot of Star Wars stuff that we can talk about. Because I've been trying to be able to just binge everything when it comes out, because like we were talking about before, it was time. So Book of Boba Fett, I have not seen any of it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't spoil it for you then.
I'm not asking. I appreciate that, but as a fan, is it worth it even?
It's worth it. I've had my gripes about it. It's a fun show. There's plenty of stuff for the fans to dig into. I wasn't terribly crazy about some of the kind of disjointed storytelling in it.
Okay.
But I still like the actors. I love seeing Tamura Morrison playing Boba Fett again. I love seeing, some of those callbacks to the original trilogy. So all that stuff is fun. I think for a fan, it's definitely worth checking out. And I mean, it's just a fun show, and you don't have to, you don't have to think too much about it. I think the Mandalorian sort of reinvigorated the
Well,
Star Wars fan base, which was becoming kind of disillusioned.
after what happened with 7 was felt a little rough in places. 8 and from roughly halfway through 8 through the end of 9, to me it felt like it drove off a cliff.
I was disappointed almost from the very beginning with The Force Awakens, mostly because I felt like they weren't trying to tread any new territory with it, and Force Awakens just felt a little too much like a rehash, and and unnecessarily so. I don't think it was necessarily a mistake to revisit some of those themes, but it was almost a verbatim beat for beat remake of the original Star Wars, and I didn't see why that was particularly necessary. By the time we got to The Last Jedi, I appreciated that they were trying to do something a little bit different with it. The Last Jedi feels to me like a movie that was made by somebody who never watched a Star Wars movie, and by the time they got to Rise of Skywalker, I think it was damage control, and they didn't know what they were doing with it. I don't understand why it never felt to me like there was a cohesive outline, with a story arc that ran over 3 films. It felt like 3 distinctly different visions.
And that's what happened. Part of it is when you change directors in the middle of it.
Well, I don't, I mean, the original trilogy had 3 different directors. George Lucas directed the first one, Irvin Kershner, Empire Strikes Back, and then Richard Marquand, Return of the Jedi. But there was still a through line, that made sense in terms of the 3-movie arc.
That's because through all of that, you had George Lucas still looking over everything, going, "This is how it will be."
Still had the singular vision of one man's creation. A lot of people make the point that, well, George Lucas, didn't really plan it out either, and I tend to disagree. The reason Star Wars feels so self-contained, the original 1977 version, is because when he made that, he had no idea he was ever going to get a chance to make another one. So he created a pretty complete story arc with the original Star Wars. Of course, it exploded and became bigger than anybody ever imagined it would. So then he got a chance to go through and say, okay, now I can tell the other chapters that I want to tell. Disney from the get-go knew they were making 3 movies. So why they didn't have a 3-movie arc already in place,
and what
sense to me at all. So,
and what disappointed me the most is with the amount of material out there for, why not go with the Mandalorian armor? Why not go with Heir to the Empire? Pick pick one of these, something like that, where you've already got your story. Just go with it rather than and keep everything going.
By the time Disney bought it, I think they had their own plans for what they wanted to do with Star Wars, and I think
make money.
And they discarded everything that came before, which I think was a huge mistake. A lot of people got bent out of shape that they completely erased the old canon from all the books and the comics that came before Disney purchased it. I wasn't necessarily that upset about it, because while there was some really good stuff, there was also some really pretty bad stuff too. So I didn't mind seeing that stuff get erased at all. And it's not like that stuff isn't still there. I can go back and read that stuff if I want. So it's still there. We can still enjoy it. The continuity now has become kind of a mess anyway with the new movies, I think. So
it's such a mess. But
not to say that everything Disney's done with it is bad. I loved Rogue One.
Absolutely, that one.
I'm in the minority that loved Solo. I thought Solo was a great movie. And I was one of the ones that didn't want to see that movie get made. I thought we don't need a Han Solo movie. We know everything about him we need to know. But the more I watch that movie, the more it wins me over. And it's, I know I really enjoy that one. So I don't think everything Disney's done is bad. But it is. It's a money-making machine for them. So.
And Morgan says she loves Solo too. Well,
got tape. So.
Now, it's funny you say that, because we're at the point in the show where every single time I have every single guest I have on the show, when we talk about Star Wars, we talk about the Force board. Where I've got, I have, we've got the prequels, the originals, the stuff Disney did, and then some the individual stuff, the Solo, the Ewoks, Rogue One.
Okay.
Okay. And so Shannon, I got your name here.
All right.
Which box would yours be going? Would you want your name going into? Rogue One.
I have to pick. No, you're saying I have to pick one.
Yeah, pick one, and there is no wrong answer.
Okay. Well, if I have to pick one, I have to go with the original Star Wars, because that's the one that started it all. That's the one that I went and saw that 4 years old with my dad, and it changed everything. I knew after I saw that movie that I wanted to be an artist. I was interested in the guys that brought all that to life, so it wasn't the actors on the screen that I idolized. It was the guys behind the scenes, so I gotta go with episode 4. So
and you're in some pretty good company there. You got Tony Fleeks, the guy wrote Stray Dogs, and he's done a lot of work with My Little Pony. So I think that's a name that's going to be around a while. Chris Morey he was doing some writing and lettering for IDW for Godzilla and Transformer stories. Now he's over with Toho, working exclusively on Godzilla.
Okay.
So like I said, you're in good company there.
Can't go wrong with Godzilla.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So we're at about the hour mark, a little over the hour mark. Do you have any projects that you're working on that you want to share with anybody?
Well, I'm actually working on. Well, besides Dragonring number 2 that I'm working on, I have a few other projects besides commissions and things like that. We're putting out a book. Actually, it's a book I'm returning to. I started it years ago with a couple of buddies of mine, H.J. Waples and Andy Owens, and we started a comic book about it's 10 years or so now. It's embarrassingly long how long we've taken to get that one done. But the first 4 issues are already drawn, but we just we for whatever reason, life got in the way, and we never got around to getting it published. And Jeremy of Outland Entertainment has kind of been on my tail to get that published through them, and so we're finally going to do it. So Redeemers, the Redeemers is the name of the book. It's sort of a supernatural Western, and
okay.
The launch for the Kickstarter, that's going to be in April. We don't have a set date yet for it, but so we're launching the Kickstarter for that in April. I just finished a brand new cover for issue number 1 of that. I've been posting the progress on my Facebook page the last few days. So
okay.
So so that one's we're finally gonna get steam forward on that one, and so issue number 5 is in progress. HJ just finished the script for it, so I'm going to be starting work on that pretty soon, as well as working on Dragonring. So I'm going to be plenty busy here for.
Hey, busy is always good.
Yeah,
You know,
it's the kind of busy I like. So
exactly. Well, to me, you're living the dream. Betting on yourself and making it work. Where if you're to the point where you can do you're doing freelance and being able to pay the bills off of that rather and being able to say see you later than 9 to 5.
right.
I look forward to that day for myself, but I have a feeling that's a ways away still.
Well,
But,
it's not always roses, but little by little, I'm making it work and building it up. So
well, don't get me wrong. I don't, barring a winning Powerball ticket, I don't have delusions of grandeur where okay, overnight, hey, we're there.
for sure,
it'd be nice, but
it's one thing. It's important to do what you love to do, and my dad spent 40 years as a respiratory therapist and hated it. He hated that job. And that was the one thing he told my brother and I. He says, I don't care what you guys do, just make sure it's something you love to do. So
exactly, for that reason, life's too short to not be happy.
Yep.
And on that bombshell, we're going to wrap up tonight's episode, and that way you can get back to working on Dragonring 2, because I'm looking forward to that very much. Because hey, like say, I'm all about supporting independent local artists. So my pleasure. And I need to make sure to get some stuff squared away with the kids before it gets too late for them this evening. So thank you for coming on tonight. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Sharing your tales about the 501st and all the other Star Wars stuff along the way.
I did. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, when we get closer to closer to the drop date for Dragonring, sorry, we'll get we'll see what we can do to get get a little bit more publicity and press going for you on that one, and hey, it'll be lots of fun for everybody.
Right on.
So until next time, gang, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. I'm Quentin Rushing. There won't be a show next week. The following week, we're going to have a 9:00 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern time show for Jermeel Lassie from Concrete Comics will be joining us, and we're going to be talking about Absolver and what it's like, what life on the Eastern Seaboard is like, and especially, hey, Philly cheesesteaks, the foodie thing. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah.